And before we get started today, so this is a special episode. I know I missed the full episode this week, but some stuff going on. But we have a special drop this week. We're going to be getting into Kendrick Lamar's announcement of him working on his last album for TDE, and what that really not only means for him, the artist, but also for hip hop as a whole. And I think the conversation that I want to have on it and where I go with it is hopefully interesting, and hopefully it opens up some discussion. So that's where I am now. We still will be dropping our full episode of The Awakened Soul coming up this upcoming week. We are almost before the end of this year. We will be at 250 episodes of the Awakened Soul podcast. And that's just number episodes. That's not counting the bonus episodes. That's like this. This is a bonus episode. It's not technically one of the numbered episodes. So just keep that in mind. We're over here working at the Awakened Soul. And, just celebrated my 4-year anniversary of doing this podcast. And it's just been amazing and so appreciative of the growth that we've had over those 4 years and everything, and all the support we continue to get. We always have gotten, and hopefully we always will get. But that is enough prefacing. This is your opening for The Awakened Soul, a special episode on Kendrick Lamar's last album for TDE announcement. We're going to go ahead. We're going to get into our intro music, and I'll catch you guys on the other side of that with the main discussion. All right, so we're, I guess, in a way, in my dark and twisted, crazy ass mind, this would have been in the mind of Haize segment turned into a special episode, just because I didn't want to wait till I dropped the next full episode to really get into all of this, but I do want to go ahead and talk about it. And Kendrick Lamar, if you guys have been living under a rock, he announced that the album that he's put in the final touches on is going to be his last album for TDE. He released it in like this, go to this website. It was an interesting way in which he released it, and everything Kendrick does usually seems very thought out. And he's one of those artists who he doesn't just do things just to do them. It's usually a purpose or a method behind the madness with everything he does. And so, it definitely was a shocker to a lot of people. He's been with TDE since we've known him. He's basically the face of that company. And so, I want to talk about it from this. I know there's a lot of conversation and a lot of speculation, I guess I should say, of does this mean Kendrick's retiring? Now, he did not announce it as a retirement at all. He said it's his last album for TDE, but I can understand naturally why it goes to that place for a lot of people. But considering how Kendrick's been out of music for as long as he has been, he kind of drops his albums and he goes away, and he launched his own company about a year and a half, or maybe even 2 years at this point ago, and people were wondering, what is this company exactly? Is it going to house or be a record label? And maybe that picture becomes a little bit more clear after this announcement and after this album drops. But Kendrick Lamar leaving TDE, while a lot of people are wondering what happened, I know there's been more seemingly issues out of TDE the last couple of years than what it was ever at any point in that record label's history. They've always been one of those companies that just seem to have their shit together. To the releases, to how everyone supported each other when albums released. Like, they used to do the thing where when one of their artists dropped an album, every artist on that label changed their profile pic on social media to that album's cover, and it just seemed really good. And so I don't want to take this from a negative standpoint. I'll let everybody else have that conversation and speculation. I want to do it differently. I think what Kendrick is doing here is the natural progression of what an artist of his stature should do, and that is build your brand, build your artistry, build yourself, get aware of what the industry is and does and how it operates, and how this because we see so many artists getting eaten up by the music industry. We see so many artists not able to continue being them and do their message because of how this industry goes and how it makes you change, and how once brands and you start getting to a certain level, people get caught up in that. So I think when you are an artist that reaches the level of a Kendrick Lamar, to the point where you can drop whenever you want to, he didn't need to make this announcement. He could have dropped the album and it's going to do just as well. Is that the natural progression of that? Well, if you have the business mindset, is to then see what you can do and how you can craft it, how you can take ownership of your own career, hopefully build the careers of others, build a brand, and then build your own legacy. And I think that's what's happening here, and that's what I hope to happen. When you think about, like, even what a Drake has done, even though artists on OVO haven't done great except for Drake, in my opinion, but what Big was supposed to do. Like, we all at this point know Big was originally going to start his own record label before he passed away. He ultimately wasn't able to do it. Same thing with Pac. I think he was supposed to start his own label. What Jay's been able to do. And like, when you see artists, also Dreamville, gotta shout out J. Cole. But when you get to a point in this industry and you reach a certain level where your name is huge, right? It's a household name. People know the name of Kendrick Lamar. And then even for some, those rare off people who may not know Kendrick Lamar and who he exactly is, you know a Kendrick Lamar song when you hear it. They know his voice. But so I see this as a natural progression of what needs to happen, or what a lot of artists should aim to do. Spend your years growing your name, spend your years learning the industry, spend your years gaining your knowledge, growing your base, and then branch out and try to do your own thing. This Kendrick, if let's say the company that he created does not end up being his own record label, let's say he does sign to another label or whatever, will be the biggest free agent maybe in music history. But still, you have to put yourself in that position. And then sometimes it's not, we got to stop looking at outgrowing something as always being a negative, right? If whatever this relationship with TDE ending or whatever, hasn't been any outward negativity. If it is, they've kept it behind the scenes. If there's drama there, they've kept it behind the scenes, and that's how it's supposed to go. But let's say that there isn't. Let's say that there isn't any drama with this. Let's say that there isn't any issues within that record company or that label. And let's say that this is just Kendrick wanting to branch out and do his own things. Hell, even if, and that's the thing, we have to stop painting artists in boxes artificially, because it helps us, right? I think sometimes we paint artists as like just it's just music. Like, Kendrick has shown, if nothing else, that he has such an interest. He is an artist in the true sense of the word. It's not just music. He's not just a musician. He is a musician. That is part of his artistry, but he's much more than that. And so Kendrick leaving TDE may be so he can create his own thing and have it all housed under something that he creates, whether it be music, whether it be TV, whether it be film, whether it be writing, whether it be, novels, which is another form of writing, but whatever it is. And so Kendrick even putting himself in a position to where, whether he's a free agent artist wise, whether he goes independent, whether he creates his own label, whatever it decides to do, this is what ultimately you should want your favorite artist to be in a position to do this. And I, for one, applaud Kendrick, not just for the way that he announced it, but the fact that him betting on himself. We don't see that a lot in the music industry. We see kind of the safe bets. Even artists who are independent, they don't really, once they start seeing success independent wise, they kind of stay in that box. And so, you guys know Kendrick Lamar is my favorite rapper right now. If you can't tell, if you've been listening to this podcast since the start, I think my second episode ever on this podcast was the episode with me and Fame Black discussing the careers of Drake versus Kendrick Lamar. Up until that point, so much has happened since then. But so I really do think that this, whatever's happening here, whatever this ends up being, whatever shape that it takes, is the shape that we should want to see artists take. Now, to move aside of that, what is this album going to be? We know that Kendrick, the way that he releases his albums and the way that he creates his albums is where he is at that point, right? Good Kid, Mad City is completely different from To Pimp a Butterfly, which is completely different to Damn. And so Kendrick being an artist and being now in this place where he's been kind of out of sight, out of mind for the better part since Damn released. And we know he's had a lot of growth individually since then. What is this album going to look? What is it going to sound like? How is it going to feel? And he talked at one point about wanting to always create something differently, wanting to be groundbreaking in what he creates and wanting it to be honest. And so, we're in the time period where Drake, Kanye, and Kendrick are all set to release soon, hopefully. And so this is a great time for the music industry. And while this year with COVID and everything, music releases have been kind of what they've been. I think when at least as a fan of Kendrick and as a fan of artistry, I can't wait to break this album down sonically. I can't wait to consume. Like, we live in a time, and I talked about it in the episode with my sister. Shout out to anyone who watched the video when we talked about King's Disease. But we live in a time where a lot of the music made nowadays has its time, has its brief run, and then it kind of just goes away naturally. Not like that you don't ever go back to it, or not that, may not stay in rotation for a little while, but we really don't get a lot of albums that sit and make us think. Shout out to Nas for King's Disease too, that really did that. But a Kendrick Lamar album at this point in time, at least, and then, again, I don't want to project my hopes and anticipations onto him, because I hope that he created whatever he wanted to create in this, and he made this album for him. But with that being said, like, I just expect this to be fucking amazing. If I'm just being honest with you, I expect this album to be to just be a complete story, and that's what Kendrick does when you really look at his albums. And so, Kendrick Lamar growing to the point that he has been, just to think the young kid that Kendrick was when he dropped, and when he was having his rise and stuff, that people didn't really know what to expect from Kendrick. Like, for those who know, J-Rock was, like, at that time considered like the guy in TDE, and like Kendrick naturally grew himself into where he is. And so I personally think Kendrick has multiple classic albums. I think Damn's a classic, Good Kid, Mad City's a classic, Section 80 is a classic to me. To Pimp a Butterfly, I know that's like divisive. Like, some people think that album isn't amazing. Like, that album to me is just fucking great. Like, and again, I understand, and I have this conversation from the place that I know I am a huge Kendrick Lamar fan, right? And I know that sometimes when it comes to Kendrick Lamar, I do have to step back, and that's why I love the Breaks Radio. Shout out to them, and we'll be breaking down and talking about this announcement some as well, is that I love being able to have other people's perception on it, because I know my perception is strictly that of a huge Kendrick Lamar fan. As a person, as a musician, as an artist, everything, I love Kendrick Lamar. And so when this album comes out, I can't wait to see what the conversation is between regular music goers and Kendrick Lamar fans, and just where that falls in the midst of that. Kendrick is a great artist. Now, to kind of get back on the thing here of like Kanye, Drake, Kendrick all dropping around the same time, it's naturally created conversation amongst the different fan bases with those. And I really think ultimately it's a win. And I know I hate using it's become so cliche that the culture won, it's for the culture or whatever else. But I really do think that this is going to be a great time, whether we love all the music, whether you're a fan of all the artists. It's good when artists of this stature all drop albums within the same calendar year. And we just, like I said, we're coming off King's Disease 2 coming out, and that's still just being what a great album and piece of work that was. But I want to hear from you guys. What do you guys think about the announcement? What do you guys think about Kendrick Lamar branching out on his own? Do you expect him to be a good executive? If that's what we still don't know for sure, but if that's what he decides to do, where do you expect that to go? What do you think we're going to see from Kendrick Lamar going forward in his career? And like I said, not just his music career, in his career as an artist, as a creative, what do we expect to see from him? And that's really it. That's all I have for you guys today. Like I said, the short episode, I know, was built around one topic and one topic alone. I really do this and let's not, and I didn't get into, and I'll save that conversation for the Breaks Radio, the speculation of if Kendrick does retire as a musician, what does that vacuum create? Like who fills that gap? And I know it's not like sports where somebody has to step up on a sports team. Somebody has to score those points. But I think that if Kendrick is stepping away from music, and I know technically he stepped away after Damn, but if he's like retires as a solo artist and maybe wants to focus on doing his other endeavors, what does that mean for the music industry? That's an interesting conversation to have. Make sure you check out my other podcast, The Breaks Radio, that I do with Mary, Baylor, and Marquis. We'll be breaking down and talking about all of that as well from that standpoint. But that's it. Thank you for joining me on this quick episode of the Awaken Soul Podcast. Make sure you're following the podcast at Awaken Soul Pod. You can follow me at CEO Haize. That's CEO Haize. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, theawakensoulpod@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave us a voicemail, I'll play it on this podcast. We'll pick up if it's about Kendrick. The voicemail number for that is 614-547-2039. We are the #1 podcast for the culture, and we out this bitch. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks Media.